Imagine a luxurious train, the Orient Express, slicing through the night, its opulent dining car filled with secrets as dark as the shadows outside. A fortune in bonds, $1 million, vanishes from a locked compartment, and the thief is among the passengers. Who could it be? The glamorous countess with a hidden debt? The nervous young Englishman who knows too much? The solitary Russian with gleaming boots? Or the tearful girl protecting a desperate uncle? Hercule Poirot, the brilliant Belgian detective, steps into a web of lies, where every clue, a crimson lipstick smudge, a blue wool thread, a cryptic note, points to betrayal. Will he unravel the truth before the train reaches its final stop? Dive into a classic Agatha Christie-style mystery, where suspense, deception, and shocking twists keep you guessing until the very last moment. Chapter 1. The Quiet Before the Storm. The Orient Express, that grand artery of European travel, sliced through the twilight, its wheels humming a steady rhythm against the rails. The dining car, aglow with the soft flicker of crystal chandeliers, was a tableau of elegance. White-gloved waiters glided between tables, their movements as precise as a ballet, serving delicate portions of coq au vin and chilled champagne to passengers who conversed in hushed, cultured tones. The air was thick with the scent of polished mahogany, starched linen, and the faint perfume of wealth. Yet, beneath this veneer of civility, a subtle tension simmered, like a storm gathering on a distant horizon. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the observer of human nature, sat at a corner table, his eyes drifting over the assembled company. To his left, a French countess, Madame de la Roche, toyed with a pearl necklace, her laughter brittle as she spoke to a young Englishman, Mr. Charles Langley, whose flushed cheeks suggested one glass too many of claret. Across the aisle, an American financier, Mr. Theodore Grayson, sat alone, his heavy brows furrowed over a leather-bound ledger. His fingers, thick and calloused, drummed an impatient rhythm on the tablecloth. Nearby, Miss Ella Leather Shoes settled into the seat opposite Hastings. His mustache, a masterpiece of symmetry, twitched slightly as he surveyed the dining car. The Orient Express is a stage, Hastings, and we are but spectators. Yet, I sense the curtain is about to rise on something most intriguing. Hastings chuckled, though his unease did not dissipate. You see drama in everything, Poirot. It's just a train journey. Rich people, fine food, nothing out of the ordinary. Poirot's green eyes gleamed with amusement. Nothing out of the ordinary? No, my friend. The ordinary is a myth. Every glance, every gesture, every word spoken or unspoken. It is a clue to the human heart. And the heart, Hastings, is rarely content to be merely ordinary. Before Hastings could reply, a commotion erupted at the far end of the car. Mr. Grayson, the American financier, had risen abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. His face was ashen, his hands clutching the edge of the table, as though to steady himself. "My bonds!" he bellowed, his voice cutting through the polite murmur of conversation. "They're gone! $1 million in bearer bonds, stolen from my compartment." The dining car fell silent, every eye turning toward Grayson. Madame de la Roche gasped, her pearls slipping through her fingers to clatter onto her plate. Mr. Langley's glass froze halfway to his lips. Miss Vaughan's expression remained unreadable, though her teacup trembled again. Signor Rossi's monocle dropped, dangling from its chain, while Miss Clara clutched his arm, her eyes wide with alarm. Poirot leaned forward, his fingers steepled, his expression one of calm curiosity. "Eh bien," he murmured, almost to himself. The curtain rises. The train's chief steward, a wiry man named Monsieur Dubois, hurried to Grayson's side, his professional composure strained. "Mr. Grayson, please, calm yourself. Are you certain the bonds are missing? Perhaps they are misplaced." "Misplaced?" Grayson's voice was a growl. "They were locked in my briefcase, in my compartment, not 2 hours ago. I checked them myself before dinner. Someone on this train is a thief." The word thief hung in disappearances. The financier's scowl softened, replaced by a flicker of hope. "Very well. I checked the bonds at 6 o'clock, just before dressing for dinner. I locked the briefcase and left it under my berth. When I returned at 8, the lock was broken, and the bonds were gone." "And the compartment?" Poirot pressed. "It was locked when you left?" "Of course it was," Grayson snapped. "I'm not a fool. The door was locked, the window secured. Someone broke in." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And who, may I ask, knew of these bonds?" Grayson hesitated, his gaze sweeping the dining car. "No one. At least, no one should have known. I mentioned them to my solicitor in London, but that was weeks ago. On this train, I told no one." A murmur rippled through the passengers. Madame de la Roche whispered something to Mr. Langley, who shook his head vigorously. Miss Vaughan's lips pressed into a thin line, and Signor Rossi adjusted his monocle, his eyes darting toward his niece. Poirot rose, his movements deliberate, his small frame commanding the room's attention. "Monsieur Dubois, if you please, ensure that no one leaves this train until we reach the next station. And you, Monsieur Grayson, will show me this compartment. The little grey cells, they are already at work." As Poirot and Grayson moved toward the sleeping cars, Hastings followed, his mind racing. The Orient Express, with its locked compartments and limited passengers, was a perfect stage for a crime. Yet the thief, whoever they were, had been bold, precise, and utterly ruthless. The question was not only who had stolen the bonds, but why. And as Hastings glanced back at the dining car, at the faces now masked with suspicion, he knew one thing for certain. No one was as innocent as they seemed. The train rattled on through the darkening countryside, its rhythm unbroken. But the harmony of the evening was shattered. Somewhere among the velvet upholstery and polished silver, a thief lurked. And Hercule Poirot's berth, neatly made, occupied one wall, while a small mahogany table held a crystal decanter and a single glass. A leather armchair sat beneath a window, its velvet curtain drawn back to reveal the inky blackness of the countryside rushing past. Above the berth, a luggage rack held a single valise, and beneath it, a battered briefcase lay askew, its lock visibly broken. "Here," Grayson said, his voice gruff as he pointed to the briefcase. "That's where they were. Locked tight, I swear it. I checked them at 6 o'clock as I told you." Poirot stepped into the compartment, his movements precise, almost cat-like. His eyes, sharp and green, swept the room, taking in every detail. The faint scuff on the floor near the door, the angle of the briefcase, the undisturbed decanter. He knelt beside the briefcase, his gloved fingers tracing the jagged edge where the lock had been forced. "Curieux," he murmured. "The damage is precise, not brutal. A tool, perhaps a small pry bar, but wielded with care. This was no act of desperation, Hastings." Standing near the door, peered over Poirot's shoulder. "Looks like a professional job to me. Someone knew exactly what they were after." "Précisément, mon ami," Poirot replied, rising to his feet. "But a professional thief does not act without knowledge. Someone knew of Monsieur Grayson's bonds, and someone knew when he would be absent from his compartment." He turned to Grayson, his moustache twitching slightly. "You are certain, monsieur,
that no one on this train was aware of your bonds. Grayson's face reddened. I told you. I mentioned them to no one. Not here. My solicitor in London knew, but he's 300 miles away. I'm not in the habit of broadcasting my business to strangers. Poirot's gaze lingered on Grayson, as if weighing the truth of his words. And yet someone knew. Tell me, monsieur, what is the nature of these bonds? Why carry such a fortune in so portable a form? Grayson hesitated, his thick fingers clenching into fists. They're bearer bonds, negotiable anywhere. I was taking them to Istanbul for a deal, a private investment in a shipping venture. The less you know about it, the better.
Cleared his throat nervously. Monsieur Poirot, the Orient Express is the safest train in Europe. Our passengers are of the highest caliber. Surely, this must be a mistake. Poirot's smile was thin and unamused. A mistake, Monsieur Dubois. $1 million does not vanish by mistake. No, this is a crime, and a bold one. We must now determine who had the opportunity and the motive. Hastings, ever practical, interjected. The dining car was full from 6 to 8. Everyone was there, weren't they? That means the thief had to act between those hours, when the corridor was empty. Poirot nodded approvingly. Very good, Hastings. The time is indeed critical. Let us establish the alibis. Monsieur Dubois, you will provide me with a list of all passengers in this carriage and their movements between 6 and 8 o'clock. Every detail, s'il vous plaît. Dubois nodded, though his expression suggested he dreaded the task. At once, Monsieur Poirot. As the steward hurried away, Poirot returned to the briefcase, his fingers brushing the leather. This briefcase, Monsieur Grayson. It is not new, yes? The leather is worn, the stitching frayed. Why choose such a humble vessel for so great a treasure? Grayson's jaw tightened. It's reliable. I've used it for years. No one would suspect it held anything valuable. Perhaps, Poirot said softly, or perhaps someone knew its contents precisely because it was so unremarkable. A thief does not always look for gold in a gilded box. Grayson's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, a sharp cry echoed from the corridor. Hastings spun towards the sound, his hand instinctively reaching for a revolver he no longer carried. Poirot, unruffled, stepped into the corridor, where Miss Clara Rossi stood, her face pale, her hands clutching a crumpled handkerchief. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot," she gasped, her Italian accent thick with distress. "I heard everything. A theft, here, on this train. It's dreadful. My uncle, he is so upset. Performance. We shall see." As they returned to the dining car, the passengers had resumed their conversations, though the air was now thick with suspicion. Madame de la Roche was whispering animatedly to Mr. Langley, who nodded with exaggerated solemnity. Miss Vaughan sat alone, her teacup untouched, her eyes fixed on some distant point. Signor Rossi now returned to his seat, adjusted his monocle with trembling fingers, while Clara hovered beside him, her handkerchief still clutched tightly. Poirot paused at the entrance to the dining car, his gaze sweeping over the assembled company. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "A crime has been committed. A fortune in bonds has been stolen from Monsieur Grayson's compartment. I, Hercule Poirot, will find the culprit. But I warn you, every word, every glance, every action will be observed. The truth it cannot hide from the little grey cells." A murmur of unease rippled through the car. Grayson glared at the other passengers, his fists still clenched. Madame de la Roche's laughter was sharper now, almost forced. Mr. Langley drained his glass in one gulp. Miss Vaughan's lips twitched, as if suppressing a smile, and Signor Rossi, his monocle gleaming, met Poirot's gaze with an expression that was both wary and defiant. Hastings leaned close to Poirot, his voice low. "This lot's a nest of vipers, Poirot. Any one of them could have done it." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A nest of vipers, perhaps, but only one has struck, and that one, Hastings, has left a trail. We have only to follow it." As the train thundered on through the night, the dining car seemed to close in around them, a gilded cage where secrets waited to be uncovered. The game, as Poirot would say, was afoot. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Hercule Poirot. The Orient Express continued its relentless journey through the night, the rhythmic clatter of its wheels a stark contrast to the mounting tension within the first-class carriage. The dining car, once a haven of refinement, now felt like a stage where every passenger played a carefully curated role. Hercule Poirot, however, was no mere began, his voice clear and measured. "A crime has been committed, and it is my duty, no, my privilege, to uncover the truth. The theft of Monsieur Grayson's bonds is no trivial matter. $1 million has vanished, and the thief is among us, here, on this train. I ask for your cooperation, for the truth. It will reveal itself only through the careful examination of facts." A murmur of unease rippled through the dining car. Mr. Theodore Grayson, still standing near the door to the sleeping carriages, crossed his arms, his face a mask of impatience. "Get on with it, then," he growled. "I want my bonds back, not a lecture." Poirot's moustache twitched, but he ignored the interruption. "To begin, I must understand the movements of each of you between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock this evening, when the theft occurred. Monsieur Dubois, the steward, has kindly provided a list of passengers in this carriage. We shall proceed methodically." Monsieur Dubois, hovering nervously at Poirot's side, produced a neatly written list and handed it to the detective. Poirot glanced at it, then turned his attention to the passengers. "Let us start with you, Madame de la Roche." The French countess, her pearl necklace now back in place, raised a delicate eyebrow. "Moi? Surely, Monsieur Poirot, you do not suspect a lady of such vulgarity." Her voice was light, but her fingers tightened around her wineglass. "Suspicion, madame, is not my purpose," Poirot replied smoothly. "I seek only the truth. Where were you between 6 and 8? Madame de la Roche tilted her head, as if recalling a trivial detail. "I was preparing for dinner in my compartment until 6:30. Then I joined Monsieur Langley in the lounge car for a cocktail, before we came to the dining car at 7. Is that not so, Charles?" Mr. Charles Langley, the young Englishman, nodded eagerly, his cheeks still flushed from the claret. "Quite right, madame. We were together the whole time, chatting about Paris, you know. Awfully pleasant." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you, Monsieur Langley?" "Signor Rossi, Mademoiselle Clara, if you please." The elderly Italian adjusted his monocle, his movements slow and deliberate. "I was in my compartment, resting," he said, his voice thick with an Italian accent. "My health, it is not what it was. Clara was with me, reading to me from Dante. We did not leave until 7, when we came to dine." Clara nodded vigorously, her handkerchief now tucked into her sleeve. "Yes, that's right. I was with Uncle all evening. He needs me close, you see." Poirot's expression remained impassive, but Hastings could tell his friend was cataloguing every word, every inflection. "And you, Monsieur Grayson?" Poirot asked, turning to the financier. "Your movements, if you please, to confirm." Grayson's scowl deepened. "I already told you. I checked the bonds at 6, locked the briefcase, and left for the dining car. I was here from 6:30 until 8, when I went back and found the theft." Poirot nodded, his pencil moving swiftly across his notebook. And during this time, the corridor was empty. No one saw anything unusual? A chorus of denials followed, each passenger shaking their head or murmuring no. Yet Hastings noticed the way Madame de la Roche's fingers twitched, and the way Mr. Langley's eyes darted toward her. Miss Vaughan's gaze remained fixed on Grayson, as if searching for something in his expression. Signor Rossi coughed softly, and Clara's hand tightened on his arm. Poirot closed his notebook with a snap. Very well. The alibis, they are established, for now. But alibis, mes amis, are like mirrors. They reflect what we wish to see, but they may also distort. I shall examine the compartment again, and I ask that no one leaves this car until I return. As Poirot and Hastings made their way back to Grayson's compartment, Hastings could not shake the feeling that the passengers' stories were too neat, too rehearsed. They're all covering something, aren't they? He whispered. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Covering, perhaps, or simply unaware of what they reveal. The human heart, Hastings, is a labyrinth. But every labyrinth, women. Madame de la Roche or Miss Clara? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Or someone who wishes us to think so. The clue, it is not always what it seems. We must consider all possibilities. As they returned to the dining car, Monsieur Dubois approached, his face even paler than before. Monsieur Poirot, I have checked the staff. All were accounted for during the dinner service, except for one porter, Jacques, who was attending to luggage in the baggage car. He swears he saw no one near the sleeping car. Merci, Monsieur Dubois, Poirot said. And the other passengers? Any who were not in the dining car at all? Dubois hesitated. Only one, sir. A gentleman in the second-class carriage, a Mr. Ivan Volkov, a Russian merchant. He took dinner in his compartment alone. Poirot's eyebrows rose. A Russian merchant, you say? Most interesting. I shall speak with him later. For now, we return to our friends. The dining car was quieter now, the passengers subdued. Poirot's presence seemed to cast a shadow over their earlier bravado. As he took his seat, he leaned toward Hastings and whispered, The game, it progresses. The lipstick, the scuff mark, the alibis, they are pieces of the puzzle. But the picture, Hastings, it is not yet clear. Hastings nodded, his mind racing. The Orient Express, with its locked compartments and guarded secrets, was a microcosm of deception. And somewhere, among the velvet and crystal, a thief was watching, waiting, and perhaps underestimating the little Belgian with the extraordinary mind. Chapter 4. The questions begin. The dining car of the Orient Express, bathed in the golden glow of its chandeliers, seemed to shrink under the weight of suspicion. The clink of cutlery had ceased, replaced by a tense silence, broken only by the steady rhythm of the train's wheels. Hercule Poirot, seated at a central table, had transformed the elegant space into his stage, his small, precise figure commanding the attention of every passenger. Captain Hastings, at his side, marveled at how Poirot could make a room feel like a courtroom, with nothing more than a glance and a carefully mustache twitched. A faint sign of amusement. No, monsieur. The thief is here, among us. The Orient Express is a closed world, and no one has left this train. The bonds, they are still aboard, and so is the one who took them. Let us begin with you, Monsieur Grayson. You say no one knew of the bonds, yet you mentioned them to your solicitor in London. Tell me, who else might have overheard? A servant, perhaps? A business associate? Grayson's face darkened, his thick brows knitting together. No one. My solicitor's office is private, and I don't employ servants who eavesdrop. I told you I kept it quiet. Those bonds were my business, and mine alone. Yet someone knew, Poirot said, his tone gentle but unrelenting, and someone acted. Tell me, monsieur, have you enemies? Men who might wish to see you ruined? Grayson hesitated, his fingers clenching into fists. I'm a businessman. You don't make a fortune without stepping on a few toes, but no one on this train has any reason to target me. Poirot nodded, making a note. We shall see. Now, Madame de la Roche, let us return to you. You were in the lounge car with Monsieur Langley from 6:30. Did you perhaps pass by the sleeping car on your way? The Countess's laughter was sharp, like the chime of a crystal glass. Monsieur Poirot, you are persistent. No, I did not pass by the sleeping car. Charles and I went straight from my compartment to the lounge, then to dinner. The corridor was quite empty, drearily so. Mr. Langley nodded vigorously, his tie slightly askew from his earlier indulgence in claret. That's right. We didn't see a soul, just the usual stewards bustling about. Poirot's pencil paused. The stewards, you say? Did any of them approach Monsieur Grayson's compartment, or perhaps linger nearby? Langley blinked, caught off guard. Well, I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to the staff. They're always coming and going, aren't they? Précisément, Poirot murmured. And it is in the things we do not notice that the truth, subconscious, it remembers. He made another note, then turned to Signor Rossi and his niece. Signor Rossi, Mademoiselle Clara, you were together in your compartment reading Dante. Did either of you step into the corridor, perhaps to summon a steward? Signor Rossi adjusted his monocle, his weathered face creasing with displeasure. No, signore. My health does not permit wandering. Clara was with me, reading, as she said. We saw no one, heard nothing. Clara nodded, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. It's true, Monsieur Poirot. Uncle was feeling poorly, and I stayed close. We didn't leave until dinner. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing, instead turning to Monsieur Dubois. And you, monsieur, can confirm the movements of your staff? The porter Jacques was in the baggage car, you said. But what of the others? Dubois, visibly uncomfortable under Poirot's scrutiny, nodded. All my staff were accounted for, Monsieur Poirot. The dining car was busy, and the other porters were attending to passengers in the second-class carriage or preparing berths. Jacques was the only one near the baggage car, and he insists he saw nothing unusual. Insists, Poirot repeated softly, as if tasting the word. Very well. And this Mr. Volkov, the Russian merchant in second class, has he been questioned? Dubois hesitated. Not yet, monsieur. He keeps to himself. I can arrange for you to speak with him. Bon, Poirot said, closing his notebook with a deliberate snap. I shall interview him shortly. For now, I ask that you all remain here. The little grey cells, they require time to work. As Poirot rose, Hastings leaned close, his voice low. They're all so calm, Poirot. Too calm, if you ask me. Someone's hiding something. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. They are all hiding something, mon ami. The question is not whether they lie, but why. And the lipstick smudge, the scuff mark, these are threads in the tapestry. We must pull them carefully. Poirot excused himself to revisit Grayson's compartment, leaving Hastings to observe the passengers. The financier had returned to his seat, his ledger open but untouched, for something unspoken. When Poirot returned, his expression was unreadable, but his eyes gleamed with purpose. Hastings, he whispered, I have found another clue. In the corridor, near compartment 7, a single thread of blue wool, caught in the doorframe. It is not from Monsieur Grayson's clothing, nor from the steward's uniform. It is suggestive. Blue wool, Hastings said, his mind racing. Could it be from one of the passengers' coats? Or a scarf? Perhaps, Poirot said, or perhaps it is meant to mislead. We must proceed with care. The next step is to speak with this Mr. Volkov. A man who dines alone, Hastings. He may have much to hide. As Poirot moved to summon Dubois, the train gave a sudden lurch, the lights flickering briefly. A collective gasp rose from the passengers, and for a moment the mask of civility slipped. Madame de la Roche clutched Langley's arm, Miss Vaughan's book fell to the floor, and Clara let out a small cry. Grayson's ledger slid from the table, and as he bent to retrieve it, Hastings caught a glimpse of something tucked inside, a folded letter, its edge marked with a crimson seal. Poirot, too, had seen it. His eyes met Hastings's, and in that moment, Hastings knew the investigation had taken a new turn. The Orient Express, with its secrets and shadows, was yielding its clues, one by one, and Hercule Poirot was closing in. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings. The dining car of the Orient Express, though still aglow with the elegance of its crystal and mahogany, had become a crucible of suspicion. The passengers, under Hercule Poirot's unrelenting scrutiny, shifted uneasily in their seats, their earlier poise fraying at the edges. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and unspoken secrets, and the rhythmic clatter of the train's wheels seemed to underscore the mounting tension. Captain Hastings, seated beside Poirot, felt the weight of the moment, his eyes darting between the passengers, each of whom seemed to wear a mask of innocence that was beginning to crack. Such a fortune! A ripple of indignation passed through the car. Madame de la Roche's laughter was sharp and brittle. Monsieur Poirot, you cannot seriously suggest that a countess would stoop to theft. My wealth is secure, my name impeccable. Poirot's mustache twitched. Wealth, madame, is a relative term, and names, they can be tarnished. Tell me, have you had dealings with Monsieur Grayson? Perhaps a business matter, or a personal one? Her eyes widened, but she recovered quickly, fanning herself with a delicate hand. I barely know the man. We exchanged pleasantries in London once. Nothing more. Mr. Charles Langley, ever her shadow, leaned forward. She's right, Poirot. Madame de la Roche is above suspicion. If you're looking for a thief, why not start with someone who's been skulking about? His gaze darted toward Miss Eleanor Vaughan, whose cool gray eyes met his with icy disdain. Mr. Langley, Miss Vaughan said, her voice clipped, I suggest you mind your accusations. I have no interest in Monsieur Grayson's bonds, nor in his affairs. I am a governess, not a criminal. Poirot's pencil tapped lightly against his notebook. And yet, mademoiselle, you watch Monsieur Grayson with a certain intensity. Is there something you know of him that we do not? Miss Vaughan's lips parted, then closed, her composure unshaken, but her silence telling. I observe people, Monsieur Poirot. It is my habit. I know nothing of his bonds. Signor Rossi coughed, drawing attention to himself. This is absurd, he said, his Italian accent thick with irritation. My niece and I, we are simple travelers. We have no need for such money. My business in Istanbul is modest, and Clara, she is innocent of all this. Clara nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. Please, Monsieur Poirot, we only want to reach Istanbul safely. My uncle's health. Oui, mademoiselle, your uncle's health, Poirot interrupted gently. It is a concern, I understand. Yet distress can be a mask, as can innocence. We shall see. Before anyone could respond, the door to the dining car opened, and Monsieur Dubois ushered in a new figure. Thereafter. And you saw nothing unusual? No one in the corridor near the first-class carriage? Poirot's tone was neutral, but his eyes were sharp. Volkov shook his head. Nothing. I read my newspaper and prepared for sleep. This theft, it is none of my concern. Grayson, who had been silent, slammed his fist on the table. None of your concern? You're the only one who wasn't in the dining car. You had the chance to sneak into my compartment while we were all here. Volkov's eyes narrowed, but he remained calm. I am no thief, sir. I trade in furs, not bonds. Accuse me without proof, and you will regret it. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the exchange. Monsieur Grayson, accusations without evidence are like arrows without aim. They strike nothing. Monsieur Volkov, you will remain with us for now. We must all be accounted for. As Volkov took a seat, his gaze cold and unyielding, Hastings leaned toward Poirot. He's a likely suspect, don't you think? Alone, no alibi, and those boots, metal tips just like the scuff mark. Poirot's smile was faint. A likely suspect, Hastings, is often too convenient. The red herring, it swims to distract us from the truth. Consider the lipstick smudge. Monsieur Volkov does not strike me as a man who wears crimson lipstick. Hastings frowned, his mind racing. Then who? Madame de la Roche? Miss Clara? Or Miss Vaughan? Or none of them? Poirot said softly. The clue. It may be a deception. We must look beyond the obvious. Poirot turned his attention back to the passengers, his questions now sharper, probing deeper. Madame de la Roche, you mentioned meeting Monsieur Grayson in London. Was this a social occasion or something more? Professional? The Countess's smile faltered. A charity gala, nothing more. We spoke briefly about art, I believe. Why do you ask? Because, Poirot said, small conversations can reveal great secrets. And you, Monsieur Langley, you are a friend of Madame de la Roche. Do you also know Monsieur Grayson? Langley's flush deepened. The truth, Signor Poirot. We are honest people. Leave her be. Poirot nodded, but his eyes lingered on Clara's trembling hands. Honesty, Signor Rossi, is a virtue, but fear, it can obscure even the purest heart. As the interrogation continued, Hastings noticed a small detail that sent a chill down his spine. Miss Vaughan, who had been so composed, had dropped her book again, and as she bent to retrieve it, a small object slipped from her pocket. A tube of crimson lipstick, identical in shade to the smudge on Grayson's briefcase. She quickly tucked it away, but not before Hastings caught Poirot's eye. The detective's expression remained impassive, but Hastings knew his friend had seen it too. The dining car grew quieter, the passengers' faces a gallery of suspicion and fear. Volkov's arrival had shifted the dynamic, but the lipstick smudge pointed elsewhere. Was Miss Vaughan the thief, or was she, too, a red herring? And what of the letter in Grayson's ledger, with its crimson seal? The clues were mounting, but the truth remained elusive, hidden in the labyrinth of motives and lies. Poirot closed his notebook with a snap. We shall pause here, mes amis. The little grey cells, they require reflection. But rest assured, the truth, it draws closer. As the passengers dispersed to their seats, Hastings whispered, Poirot, that lipstick. It's Miss Vaughan's, isn't it? She's got to be involved. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Perhaps, Hastings. Or perhaps the thief wishes us to think so. The game, it is far from over. Chapter 6. A clue in detail. The Orient Express thundered through the night, its wheels a relentless metronome against the backdrop of a starless sky. The dining car, though still a picture of elegance with its gleaming silver and starched linen, had become a stage for unease. The passengers, under Hercule Poirot's unrelenting gaze, sat in strained silence, their earlier civility eroded by the weight of suspicion. Captain Hastings, seated beside his friend,
felt the tension like a taut wire, ready to snap. Poirot, however, remained the calm center of the storm, his small hands folded neatly, his green eyes gleaming with the quiet intent.
It was precise, calculated, and most importantly, revealed by the smallest of details. Let us examine them together. He produced a small handkerchief from his pocket, within which lay the blue wool thread he had found in the doorframe of Grayson's compartment. Holding it aloft, he turned it in the light, its faint sheen catching the chandelier's glow. "This thread," he said, "was caught in the door of compartment number 7. It is not from the Sieur Grayson's clothing, nor from the steward's uniforms. To whom does it belong?" The passengers exchanged glances, their faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Mr. Theodore Grayson, his ledger now closed tightly on his lap, scowled. "What's a bit of thread got to do with anything? You're wasting time, Poirot." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of mild amusement. "Time, Monsieur Grayson, is never wasted when it serves the truth. This thread, it is blue wool, finely woven, perhaps from a coat or scarf. Let us see if it matches." He moved toward Mr. Ivan Volkov, the Russian merchant, whose navy wool coat hung over the back of his chair. Poirot's gloved fingers brushed the fabric, then paused. "No," he said softly. "The weave is different. Too coarse, too heavy. This is not the source." Volkov's dark eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, his silence as impenetrable as his expression. Poirot moved next to Madame Delaroche, who wore a silk shawl of pale lavender. "Madame, your shawl. It is exquisite, but not wool. You have no blue garments with you?" The Countess laughed, though it sounded forced. "Blue is not my color, Monsieur Poirot. I prefer lighter shades. You'll find no such thread on me." Mr. Charles Langley, sitting beside her, shifted uncomfortably. "I've got a blue jacket, I suppose," he said, his voice tinged with nervousness. "But I wasn't anywhere near Grayson's compartment. You can check it if you like." "Merci, Monsieur Langley," Poirot said, making a note. "I shall." He turned to Miss Vaughan, whose grey wool dress was unadorned but impeccably tailored. "And you, mademoiselle, any blue wool in your possession?" Miss Vaughan's eyes met his, steady and unyielding. "None, Monsieur Poirot. My wardrobe is practical," gleamed. "A trifle, perhaps, but every trifle tells a story. I shall keep this in mind." He tucked the thread back into his handkerchief and returned to his seat, his notebook open once more. Hastings leaned close, his voice a whisper. "That shawl, Poirot. It's a dead rinner for the thread. Clara's looking guilty as sin." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Guilt, Hastings, is a matter of perception. The thread, it points to Mademoiselle Clara, yes, but the lipstick smudge points to Mademoiselle Vaughan, and the scuff mark, perhaps to Monsieur Volkov. The clues, they conflict. This is no accident." Before Hastings could respond, a new disturbance interrupted the proceedings. Monsieur Dubois, the steward, hurried into the dining car, his face flushed with agitation. "Monsieur Poirot, I have found something. In the baggage car, near where Jacques was working, a scrap of paper, torn, with numbers written on it." He handed Poirot a crumpled fragment, no larger than a playing card. Poirot smoothed it out, his eyes narrowing as he studied the scrawled digits. 645, C7. C7, he murmured. "Compartment 7, Monsieur Grayson's, and 6:45, the time of the theft. This is most illuminating." Grayson leapt to his feet, his voice booming. "That's proof! Someone planned this, timed it to the minute. Who was in the baggage car? That porter, Jacques, he's your man." Dubois shook his head vehemently. "Jacques is loyal, monsieur. He found this paper while moving luggage. He swears he saw no one near the sleeping car." Poirot's fingers traced the numbers, his mind clearly racing. This paper. It is torn from a larger sheet, yes? The ink is fresh, the handwriting hurried. Someone made a note, perhaps to ensure precision. But why leave it behind? A mistake or a misdirection? He turned to the passengers, his gaze sweeping over them like a searchlight. Does anyone recognize this handwriting?
Hastings watched Clara, whose tears had subsided, but whose hand still trembled. Miss Vaughan retrieved her book, her movements deliberate, while Volkov's boots gleamed ominously in the light. Grayson clutched his ledger, the crimson-sealed letter still hidden within, and Madame de la Roche, for all her laughter, seemed to watch everyone with a new wariness. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. The clues, Hastings. They are like stars in a constellation. Alone, they mean little. Together, they form a picture. We are close to seeing it. The train rattled on, its rhythm unbroken, but the harmony of the journey was shattered. Somewhere among the velvet and crystal, a thief was weaving a web of deception. And Hercule Poirot, with his unerring logic, was beginning to unravel it, one delicate thread at a time. Chapter 7. More Lies Surface. The Orient Express hurtled through the night, its relentless rhythm a stark counterpoint to the tangled web of secrets unfolding within its opulent confines. The dining car, once a haven of refined conversation, now felt like a chessboard, where every move was scrutinized, every glance weighted with suspicion. Hercule Poirot, seated at his table with his notebook open, exuded a quiet authority that held the passengers in a state of uneasy anticipation. Captain Hastings, ever his loyal shadow, watched the scene with a growing sense of unease, his mind grappling with the mounting clues. The blue wool thread, the crimson lipstick smudge, the scuff mark, and now the cryptic scrap of paper with its damning inscription, 6:45, C7. Poirot's green eyes, sharp and unyielding, moved from one passenger to another, as if peeling back the layers of their carefully constructed facades. The discovery of the paper had shifted the dynamic in the dining car, and the passenger's earlier composure was beginning to crack. Madame de la Roche's laughter had grown brittle. Mr. Charles Langley's flush deepened with every question, and Miss Eleanor Vaughan's cool detachment.
No, monsieur, the thief is not getting away. They are here, trapped by the very elegance of this train. And motives, they are never as hidden as one thinks. Let us begin with you, Monsieur Grayson. Your bonds, they were for a shipping venture in Istanbul, you say. But such ventures, they often involve partners, rivals, debts. Is there someone who might profit from your loss? Grayson's face reddened, his thick fingers tightening around his ledger. I don't owe anyone anything. My business is my own. You're barking up the wrong tree. Perhaps, Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. But trees, they have many branches. Let us turn to Madame de la Roche. He shifted his gaze to the Countess, whose pearl necklace gleamed under the chandelier's light. You mentioned a charity gala in London where you met Monsieur Grayson. Was there perhaps a conversation about investments? A hint of his plans? Madame de la Roche's smile was tight, her fan fluttering rapidly. Monsieur Poirot, you are relentless. It was a passing acquaintance, nothing more. I have no interest in his dreary financial dealings. My wealth is secure. Mr. Langley, ever her defender, leaned forward. She's right, Poirot. Madame de la Roche has no need for stolen bonds. Why, she's got investments across half of Europe. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Investments, Monsieur Langley. And you, as her friend, are privy to these? Or perhaps you too have financial troubles. A young man of your exuberance often finds money slips through the fingers. Langley's flush deepened, and he tugged at his collar. I'm doing fine, thank you. I don't need to steal to keep up my lifestyle. Bon, Poirot said, making a note. And you, Mademoiselle Vaughan? A governess, you say, yet your manner suggests a woman of keen observation. Have you perhaps crossed paths with Monsieur Grayson before? A professional matter, or something more personal? Miss Vaughan's gray eyes met Poirot's without flinching, but her hands, folded neatly in her lap, tightened imperceptibly. I have never met Monsieur Grayson before this journey. My work is with children. Monocle gleamed as he leaned forward, his voice sharp. You insult me, signore. My business is modest but honest. I have no need for stolen money. And Clara, she is an angel, incapable of such a crime. Clara's tears welled up again, her voice trembling. Please, Monsieur Poirot, we've done nothing wrong. Why do you torment us? Poirot's expression softened, but his eyes remained sharp. Torment, mademoiselle, no. I seek only clarity. The blue wool thread, it matches your shawl. A small detail, but significant. Can you explain how it came to be in the doorframe of Monsieur Grayson's compartment? Clara gasped, her hands flying to her shawl. I don't know. I swear, I was with Uncle the whole time. I never went near that compartment. Signor Rossi patted her hand, his face darkening. Enough, signore. You upset my niece with these accusations. That thread, it could belong to anyone. Before Poirot could respond, Mr. Volkoff spoke, his deep voice cutting through the tension. This is a farce. You point fingers at women and old men. But what of the porter, Jacques? He was in the baggage car where your precious paper was found. Why not question him? Grayson nodded vigorously. Exactly. That porter's the only one with no alibi. He's got to be involved. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. Monsieur Volkoff, your suggestion is noted. Jacques will be questioned. But I do not leap to conclusions. The paper, the thread, the lipstick, the scuff mark, they are pieces of a puzzle, and the picture is not yet complete. As the passengers absorbed this, a new revelation emerged. Monsieur Dubois, who had been hovering nervously at the edge of the car, stepped forward, his face pale. Monsieur Poirot, there is something else. I hesitated to mention it, but one of the stewards overheard a conversation earlier today. Madame Delaroche and Monsieur Langley were speaking in the lounge car, and Madame mentioned a financial difficulty, something about a debt that needed settling. Madame Delaroche's fan froze mid-motion, her eyes flashing with indignation. As the passengers dispersed to their seats, the dining car felt smaller, the air heavier with unspoken accusations. Hastings watched Madame Delaroche, whose composure was fraying, and Langley, whose nervous glances suggested more than idle talk. Miss Vaughan's cool gaze lingered on Grayson, while Clara clung to her uncle, her tears a constant presence. Volkoff sat apart, his boots gleaming ominously, and Grayson's ledger remained tightly closed, its crimson-sealed letter a silent enigma. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. The motives, Hastings, they multiply. Debts, rivalries, secrets. The thief is clever, but they cannot hide forever. The little grey cells, they are closing in. The train rattled on, its rhythm unbroken, but the harmony of the journey was shattered. The web of lies was unraveling, and Hercule Poirot was poised to expose the truth, one delicate thread at a time. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The Orient Express surged through the darkened countryside, its wheels a relentless pulse against the silence of the night. The dining car, with its glittering chandeliers and polished mahogany, had become a crucible of raw emotion, where the veneer of civility was cracking under the pressure of Hercule Poirot's relentless probing. The passengers, once a tableau of elegance, now sat with strained expressions, their secrets teetering on the edge of exposure. Captain Hastings, ever observant, felt the air grow heavier, as if the very walls of the carriage were closing in, trapping the truth within their opulent confines. Poirot, seated at his table with his notebook open, exuded a calm that contrasted sharply with the mounting tension. His green eyes, sharp and unyielding, seemed to see through the passengers' facades, noting every twitch, every glance, every faltering word. The revelations of the previous hours, the blue wool thread, the crimson lipstick smudge, the scuff mark, the cryptic note, and now the whispered talk of Madame de la Roche's debts, had woven a complex tapestry of suspicion. Yet Poirot, with his unerring logic, was not content to rest on these clues alone. He sought the spark that would ignite the truth, and he sensed it was near. Monsieur Grayson, is where motives are born, and motives, they lead us to the thief. Let us continue. He turned to Madame de la Roche, whose fan lay still in her lap, her earlier bravado replaced by a taut nervousness. Madame, you spoke of a debt, overheard by a steward. Was this debt so pressing that $1 million might have seemed a solution? The Countess's eyes flashed with indignation, but her voice trembled. How dare you, Monsieur Poirot? My financial affairs are private. Yes, I owe money. Who doesn't? But I am no thief. Mr. Charles Langley, seated beside her, reached for her hand, his face pale. She's telling the truth, Poirot. It's just a temporary shortfall. Nothing to do with Grayson's bonds. Poirot's gaze lingered on Langley, his pencil tapping lightly against his notebook. A temporary shortfall, Monsieur Langley. Yet such shortfalls can drive men and women to desperate acts. You are very protective of Madame de la Roche. Is there perhaps more to your friendship than you admit? Langley's flush deepened, and he withdrew his hand, his eyes darting to the floor. We're friends, that's all. I'd never do anything to hurt her, or anyone. Before Poirot could press further, a sob broke the silence, sharp and jarring. All eyes turned to Clara Rossi, who sat clutching her uncle's arm, her face streaked with tears. Please, Monsieur Poirot, she cried, her voice breaking, stop this. I can't bear it any longer. It's too much. Signor Rossi, his monocle glinting, patted her hand, his voice low and urgent. Clara, cara, calm yourself. There is nothing to fear. But Clara shook her head, her tears spilling over. There is, uncle. I saw something, and I didn't tell you because I was afraid. Her words tumbled out, each one a shard of glass in the tense silence. This evening, before dinner, I stepped into the corridor to fetch a glass of water. I saw someone near Monsieur Grayson's compartment. They were moving quickly, and I didn't get a good look, but it was a man, I think, in a dark coat. The dining car erupted in murmurs. Grayson's face darkened, and he leaned forward, his voice a growl. Who was it, girl? Volkov, whose navy coat matched Clara's description. This is nonsense, Rossi said sharply. My niece is upset, imagining things. She saw nothing of consequence. Poirot's gaze shifted to Volkov, who sat impassive, his dark eyes unreadable. Monsieur Volkov, you were in your compartment, you say, dining alone. Yet Mademoiselle Clara places a man in a dark coat near the scene of the crime. Your coat, it is dark, and your boots, they could account for the scuff mark. What do you say? Volkov's voice was steady, almost defiant. I say the girl is mistaken. I was in my compartment, as I told you. I have no reason to skulk near anyone's door. Grayson slammed his fist on the table, his ledger sliding to the floor. He's lying! He's the only one who wasn't in the dining car. It's him, Poirot. Arrest him! Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. No, Monsieur Grayson, we do not arrest without proof. Mademoiselle Clara's testimony is valuable, but it is not conclusive. We must consider all possibilities. Hastings, watching the exchange, leaned close to Poirot. She's shaken, Poirot. Do you believe her? And what about that letter in Grayson's ledger? It's got a crimson seal. Could it be connected to the lipstick? Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. The letter, Hastings, it intrigues me. As for Mademoiselle Clara, her tears are genuine, but her story, it may be incomplete. Fear can obscure the truth, or it can reveal it. We shall see. Poirot turned to Miss Vaughan, whose cool composure had returned, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Mademoiselle Vaughan, you have been silent. Did you, perhaps, see this man in the corridor, or hear anything that might corroborate Mademoiselle Clara's account? Miss Vaughan's lips pressed into a thin line. I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I was reading in my compartment. I saw no one, heard nothing. I cannot help you. Poirot nodded, but his eyes lingered on her.
Is close, but it requires one more push. The train rattled on, its rhythm a constant reminder of the journey's confines. The dining car, with its secrets and shadows, was a microcosm of deception. Clara's revelation had cracked the facade, but the truth remained elusive, hidden in the interplay of fear and lies. Hercule Poirot, with his unerring logic, was poised to uncover it, one delicate step at a time. Chapter 9. The Trap. The Orient Express thundered through the night, its wheels a ceaseless drumbeat against the backdrop of a moonless sky. The dining car, with its glittering chandeliers and polished wood, had transformed into a stage for a psychological duel, where Hercule Poirot wielded his intellect like a rapier. The passengers, once cloaked in elegance, now sat exposed, their nerves frayed by the Belgian detective's relentless probing. Captain Hastings, seated at Poirot's side, felt the air crackle with anticipation, as if the very walls of the carriage were holding their breath, waiting for the truth to emerge. Poirot's notebook lay open before him, its pages a meticulous record of clues and contradictions. The blue wool thread, the crimson lipstick smudge, the scuff mark, the cryptic note, Madame de la Roche's debts, and now Clara Rossi's tearful revelation of a man in a dark coat near Grayson's compartment. Each clue was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained tantalizingly incomplete. Poirot, however, was undeterred, his green eyes gleaming with the quiet certainty of a man who knew the endgame was near. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice soft but commanding, rising above the murmur of the train. We stand at a crossroads. The theft of Monsieur Grayson's bonds is a crime of precision. But the thief, they are not infallible. They have left traces, threads, smudges, notes, and now a witness. Mademoiselle Clara has given us a glimpse of the truth, but it is a glimpse only. To see clearly, we must apply pressure, to force the truth into the light. Mr. Theodore Grayson, his ledger clutched tightly, snorted derisively. Pressure? I, Hercule Poirot, shall open it. He rose, his small frame commanding the room, and began to pace slowly before the passengers, his eyes never leaving their faces. Let us consider the facts, he continued. The bonds were stolen between 6 and 8 o'clock, when the dining car was full. Mademoiselle Clara saw a man in a dark coat near compartment 7 at approximately 6 o'clock. The blue wool thread, it matches Mademoiselle Clara's shawl. The crimson lipstick smudge, it resembles Mademoiselle Vaughan's shade. The scuff mark, it could belong to Monsieur Volkoff's boots, and the note, 645, C7, suggests a plan,
a precise moment of action. Yet these clues, they contradict. Why? Madame de la Roche, her fan now motionless, laughed nervously. You speak in riddles, Monsieur Poirot. If the clues contradict, perhaps there is no thief. Perhaps Monsieur Grayson misplaced his bonds. Grayson's face reddened, his fist slamming the table. Misplaced? I'm not an idiot, madame. Someone broke into my briefcase and took them. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the outburst. Précisément, Monsieur Grayson. The briefcase was forced, the lock broken with care. This was no act of chance. But let us test the waters. I propose a small experiment. He turned to Monsieur Dubois, the steward, who stood nervously at the edge of the car. Monsieur Dubois, you will fetch the porter, Jacques, and bring him here. And you will also bring the passenger manifest, with the exact times each passenger entered the dining car. Dubois nodded, his face pale, and hurried from the car. Poirot's gaze swept over the passengers, lingering on each in turn. While we wait, let us explore another detail. The letter in Monsieur Grayson's ledger, a letter with a crimson seal, glimpsed by my friend Captain Hastings. Monsieur Grayson, will you share its contents? Grayson's eyes widened, his grip on the ledger tightening. That's private business, Poirot. It's got nothing to do with this. Everything, monsieur, is relevant, Poirot said softly. A letter, sealed in crimson, hidden in a ledger. It suggests a secret. And secret
Carriage. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the note, Jacques, the one with 645, C7. You found it in the baggage car. Where, precisely? Jacques swallowed hard. It was caught in a trunk's handle, monsieur. A trunk belonging to Signor Rossi. A gasp rippled through the car. Clara's eyes widened, her hands flying to her mouth. Uncle, no! That's impossible! Signor Rossi's face darkened, his monocle dropping from his eye. This is an outrage. My trunk. I know nothing of this note. Poirot's voice remained calm, but his words were like a blade. A note found in your trunk, Signor Rossi. A thread matching your niece's shawl. These are not accidents. Will you explain, or shall I? Clara's sobs broke out anew, and she buried her face in her hands. Uncle, tell them! Tell them it's not true! Signor Rossi's voice trembled with anger. I am no thief, signore. My business is honest. That note, it was planted, I swear it. Poirot's gaze shifted to Clara, his tone softening. Mademoiselle Clara, you are afraid. Not only for your uncle, I think, but for yourself. The man in the dark coat, did you truly see him, or was it a story to protect someone? Clara's tears stopped abruptly, her eyes wide with panic. I saw him, I did, but, oh, I don't know anymore. I'm so confused. The car fell silent, the passengers frozen in their seats. Madame de la Roche's fan slipped to the floor. Langley's hands shook, and Miss Vaughan's cool gaze flickered with something like alarm. Volkoff remained impassive, but his fingers tightened around the arm of his chair. Grayson's ledger lay untouched, the crimson seal a silent accusation. Hastings leaned close to Poirot, whispering, You've got them rattled, Poirot. Clara's on the edge. She's hiding something, isn't she? Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. She is, Hastings. But what? Fear? Loyalty? Or guilt? The trap, it is set. Now, we watch who falls into it. Poirot turned to the group. His voice rising could no longer hide. The passengers, caught in Poirot's web, were on the brink of revelation, and Hastings knew the next move would be decisive. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The dining car of the Orient Express, bathed in the soft glow of its chandeliers, was a stage set for the final act. The passengers, their faces etched with tension, sat in a semicircle of suspicion, their eyes fixed on Hercule Poirot. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and unspoken truths, and the rhythmic clatter of the train's wheels seemed to count down to an inevitable reckoning. Captain Hastings, seated beside his friend, felt his pulse quicken, sensing that Poirot's methodical unravelling of the mystery was about to reach its climax. The clues, the blue wool thread, the crimson lipstick smudge, the scuff mark, the cryptic note, Clara's tearful testimony, and the crimson-sealed letter in Grayson's ledger had woven a complex tapestry, and Poirot was ready to reveal the pattern. Poirot rose, his small frame commanding the room with an authority that belied his stature. His green eyes gleamed with the quiet certainty of a man who had solved the puzzle. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and precise, cutting through the heavy silence. "We have reached the moment of truth. $1 million in bonds has been stolen from Monsieur Grayson's compartment, and the thief is among us. The clues, they have pointed in many directions, too many perhaps, but the little grey cells, they have worked tirelessly, and now they will reveal the solution." Mr. Theodore Grayson, his ledger clutched tightly, leaned forward, his face a mixture of impatience and hope. "Get on with it, Poirot. Who took my bonds?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Patience, Monsieur Grayson. The truth, it is like a fine wine. It must be savoured. Let us begin by reviewing the evidence, step by step, to see how the pieces fit." He opened his notebook, his fingers tracing the neat rows of his meticulous script. First, the crime. The bonds were stolen from a locked...
Said yourself, Monsieur Poirot, the clues conflict. Perhaps there is no solution. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Non, madame. The conflict is the solution. The thief, they are clever, too clever. They have scattered clues to confuse, to point fingers in all directions. But the little grey cells, they see through the deception." He turned to Clara, whose tear-streaked face was pale with dread. "Mademoiselle Clara, your testimony was most illuminating. A man in a dark coat, you said, near compartment 7. Yet, your distress, it was more than fear. You were protecting someone, were you not?" Clara's eyes widened, her hands clutching her uncle's arm. "No, I saw him, I swear. I wasn't lying." Signor Rossi's voice was sharp. "Leave her alone, Signore. She has told you what she saw." Poirot's gaze softened, but his tone remained firm. "Mademoiselle Clara, you saw no man. You placed the thread from your shawl in the doorframe, did you not? To divert suspicion. To make us believe someone else was there." A gasp rippled through the car. Clara's sobs broke out anew, her voice a whisper. I didn't mean to. I was afraid." Signor Rossi's monocle dropped, his face ashen. "Clara, what are you saying?" Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "She is saying, Signor Rossi, that she acted out of loyalty to you. For it was you, Signore, who stole the bonds." The dining car erupted in murmurs. Grayson leapt to his feet, his ledger falling to the floor. "Rossi, that old man? You're mad, Poirot." Poirot's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Non, monsieur, I am not mad. Signor Rossi, your antiques business is failing, is it not? Debts in Istanbul, creditors pressing. $1 million in bonds, untraceable, negotiable, would save you. You knew of Monsieur Grayson's bonds, perhaps from a business associate in London who overheard his plans. You planned the theft with care, using the dinner hour when the corridor was empty." Rossi's face was a mask of defiance, but his hands trembled. "This is absurd." "Mislead." Clara's sobs grew louder, her voice breaking. "Uncle,
Tell them it's not true, please. Rossi's defiance crumbled, his shoulders sagging. Clara, Cara. I did it for us. The debts, they were crushing me. I thought the bonds would save us, give us a new start. Grayson's face was a thundercloud. You admit it. Where are my bonds, you old crook? Poirot raised a hand. They are still on the train, Monsieur Grayson. Signor Rossi had no time to hide them far. They are in his compartment, sewn into the lining of his valise. Dubois, the steward, hurried to check, returning moments later with a bundle of bonds, carefully extracted from Rossi's luggage. Grayson snatched them, his hands shaking as he verified their authenticity. They're all here, he muttered, almost to himself. Poirot turned to the passengers, his voice calm but resonant. The thief, he relied on deception. But the little grey cells, they see through the fog. Mademoiselle Clara, your loyalty to your uncle led you to plant the thread, but your heart betrayed you. The truth, it always finds a way. Clara buried her face in her hands, her sobs muffled. Rossi sat silent, his monocle dangling, his spirit broken. The other passengers, Madame de la Roche, Langley, Miss Vaughan, Volkoff, stared in stunned silence, their own secrets overshadowed by the revelation. Hastings leaned close to Poirot, whispering, "The letter in Grayson's ledger. What was it?" "You never mentioned it." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A distraction, Hastings. It was a business letter, unrelated to the theft, but it served to keep Monsieur Grayson off balance. The mind, it is easily swayed by what it fears to reveal." The dining car was quiet now, the tension dissipating like mist. The Orient Express rattled on, its rhythm unbroken. But the mystery was solved. Poirot closed his notebook, his work complete. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The Orient Express continued its journey through the night, its wheels humming a steady rhythm against the rails, as if oblivious to the bordered on obsession. His earlier bluster replaced by a grim satisfaction. Madame de la Roche, her fan forgotten, whispered to Mr. Charles Langley, whose flushed cheeks betrayed a lingering discomfort. Miss Eleanor Vaughan, her composure restored, sat with her book closed, her grey eyes distant but unreadable. Mr. Ivan Volkoff, the Russian merchant, maintained his stoic silence, his dark coat draped over his chair like a shadow. Poirot, his notebook closed and tucked into his pocket, leaned back in his seat, his small hands folded neatly before him. His green eyes, still sharp, held a contemplative glint, as if the resolution of the crime was but the prelude to a deeper reflection. He spoke, his voice soft but resonant, carrying the weight of his philosophy. Mesdames et messieurs, the case of the stolen bonds is closed. The thief, he has been unmasked, and the bonds, they are restored. Yet I, Hercule Poirot, find that the end of a mystery is not the end of the story. For in every crime, there is a lesson, a mirror held up to the human heart. Grayson snorted, though his tone lacked its earlier venom. A lesson? The only lesson here is to keep your valuables locked tighter than a bank vault. Ross is a crook, and that's that. Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. No, Monsieur Grayson. The lesson is not so simple. Signor Rossi, he stole not for greed, but for desperation. His debts, they pressed upon him, and in his fear he saw no other path. The human heart, it is capable of great folly when it feels cornered. Clara's voice, barely a whisper, broke the silence. He did it for me, Monsieur Poirot, for our family. I should have stopped him. Poirot's gaze softened, though his tone remained firm. "Mademoiselle Clara, your loyalty, it is admirable, but it led you to deceive. The thread from your shawl, placed to mislead, it was an act of love, but also of error. Yet you spoke in the end, and the truth, it found its way."
They were a thread in the tapestry, but not the key. "You are innocent of the theft, though perhaps not of other concealments, Langley," his flush deepening muttered. "This whole business has been a nightmare. Can we just move on now?" Poirot's gaze shifted to him, piercing but not unkind. "Move on, Monsieur Langley?" "Oui, but not without understanding. The Orient Express, it is a microcosm of life, a closed circle where secrets cannot hide forever. Each of you, you carried your own burdens, debts, ambitions, fears. The thief exploited these, but the truth, it shines brighter." Miss Vaughn, her cool detachment intact, spoke for the first time since the reveal. "And my lipstick, Monsieur Poirot? You used it to unsettle me, didn't you? To make me doubt myself." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A small tactic, mademoiselle. The smudge, it was a deception, placed to cast suspicion. But your composure, it told me you had nothing to hide, at least not in this matter." Volkov, silent until now, shifted in his seat, his deep voice cutting through the quiet. "You accused me, Poirot, with my boots and my solitude. Yet I am innocent. Your methods, they are unsettling." Poirot nodded, his tone measured. "Monsieur Volkov, innocence is not invisibility. Your solitude, it made you a convenient target, but the little gray cells, they saw beyond the obvious. The scuff mark, it was not yours, but from Rossi's tool. You too are free of this crime." The dining car fell silent, the passengers absorbing Poirot's words. The train's rhythm, ever present, seemed to underscore the finality of the moment. Hastings, reflecting on the case, marveled at Poirot's ability to untangle the web of lies and clues. "You saw it all, Poirot," he said softly. "The thread, the note, the lipstick. How did you know they pointed to Rossi?" Poirot's fingers steepled, his voice low but clear. "The clues, Hastings, they were too many, too perfect. A thief does not leave such a trail unless they—"
"Authorities will show mercy. But the heart, Hastings, it is both the source of crime and its redemption." The train rattled on, its rhythm a reminder of the world beyond the mystery. The dining car, now empty, stood as a testament to Poirot's genius, a stage where secrets had been laid bare, and the truth, as always, had prevailed. Chapter 12. The Shadows of Doubt. The Orient Express pressed onward through the night, its wheels a ceaseless murmur against the darkened landscape. The dining car, though still aglow with the soft radiance of its chandeliers, felt emptier now, as if the resolution of the theft had left a void in its wake. The passengers, their secrets exposed and their masks shattered, sat in a subdued hush, their earlier elegance replaced by a weary acceptance of the truth. Hercule Poirot's revelation had unmasked Signor Rossi as the thief, with Clara's reluctant complicity, but the air remained thick with lingering questions, as if the mystery's resolution had only peeled back one layer of a deeper enigma. Captain Hastings, seated beside Poirot, felt a restless unease. The case was solved, the bonds recovered, yet something nagged at him, a sense that the tapestry Poirot had woven was not quite complete. The crimson-sealed letter in Grayson's ledger, the fleeting glances between Madame de la Roche and Langley, the cool detachment of Miss Vaughn, these threads remained untied, dangling like loose ends in a meticulously crafted puzzle. He glanced at Poirot, whose calm exterior betrayed no hint of doubt. But Hastings knew his friend's mind was never truly at rest. Poirot, his notebook now tucked away, sipped a small glass of creme de menthe, his green eyes distant but alert. The passengers, scattered at their tables, avoided each other's gazes, their earlier camaraderie replaced by a wary distance. Signor Rossi and Clara had been escorted to their compartment by Monsieur Dubois, under strict instructions to remain there until the train reached the next station, where the authorities would take over. Grayson, his bonds secured in a new locked case provided by the steward, sat alone, his ledger open, but his attention elsewhere. Madame de la Roche and Langley whispered in low tones, their words inaudible, but their tension palpable.
The debts, the glances. They are shadows, yes, but shadows cast by truths we have not yet fully illuminated. Before Hastings could press further, Monsieur Dubois approached, his face pale but composed. Monsieur Poirot, I have spoken with the conductor. The authorities will meet us at the next station, in 3 hours. Signor Rossi and Mademoiselle Clara will be detained, and the bonds will be secured. Is there anything else you require? Poirot inclined his head. Merci, Monsieur Dubois. For now, ensure that Signor Rossi and Mademoiselle Clara remain under watch, and keep an eye on the other passengers. The thief is caught, but the game, it is not always over when the checkmate is called. Dubois nodded and withdrew, leaving Poirot and Hastings alone at their table. Hastings frowned, his mind racing. What do you mean, Poirot? Rossi admitted his guilt. The bonds are back. What else could there be? Poirot's eyes gleamed with a quiet intensity. The theft, Hastings. It was the surface crime, but beneath it lies a deeper current. Why did Signor Rossi know of the bonds? How did he learn of Grayson's plans? And the letter in Grayson's ledger, it is not part of the theft, yet it holds a secret. I suspect there is more to this journey than a simple robbery. As if on cue, a soft clatter drew their attention. Grayson's ledger had slipped from his lap, and as he bent to retrieve it, the crimson-sealed letter fell to the floor, its wax seal cracking open. Grayson cursed under his breath, snatching it up, but not before Hastings caught a glimpse of the handwriting, bold, angular, and unmistakably feminine. Poirot's gaze followed the movement, his expression unreadable. Most interesting, he murmured. Monsieur Grayson, you guard that letter as fiercely as you guarded your bonds. Perhaps you will share its contents now? Grayson's face darkened, his hand closing around the letter. It's personal, Poirot. Nothing to do with your blasted mystery. Leave it alone. Poirot's smile was polite, but unrelenting. Shine stood and left the car without a word, his dark coat trailing behind him. Hastings leaned closer to Poirot. You're not done with this, are you? You think there's another crime, or another motive, don't you? Poirot's eyes twinkled. The little Graysells, Hastings, they do not rest. The theft of the bonds. It was a crime of opportunity, but it was not born in a vacuum. Someone knew of Grayson's plans, and that knowledge, it came from somewhere. The letter, the debts, the glances, they are threads of a larger tapestry. We have solved one mystery, but another waits in the shadows. As the train rattled on, its rhythm a constant reminder of their confinement, Hastings felt a chill. The Orient Express, with its velvet upholstery and polished silver, was a world unto itself, where secrets lingered like ghosts. Signor Rossi's confession had closed one chapter, but the crimson-sealed letter, the whispered debts, and the unspoken tensions suggested that the story was far from over. Poirot sipped his creme de menthe, his expression serene, but his mind clearly at work. The human heart, Hastings, he said softly. It is a labyrinth. We have found one exit,
but there are other paths yet to explore. We shall see what the next station brings. The dining car, now nearly empty, seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the next revelation. The passengers, their secrets exposed but not fully unraveled, were players in a drama that Poirot alone could direct. And as the train sped towards its destination, Hastings knew that his friends' little grey cells were already charting the course ahead. Chapter 13. The Hidden Motive. The Orient Express sliced through the night, its wheels a relentless pulse against the darkened European landscape. The dining car, though still aglow with the soft radiance of its chandeliers, felt like a stage where the final act was yet to unfold. The passengers, their nerves frayed by the revelation of Signor Rossi's guilt and Clara's complicity, had retreated to their compartments or lingered in uneasy silence, their earlier elegance overshadowed by the weight of truth. Captain Hastings, seated beside Hercule Poirot, felt a persistent unease, as if the resolution of the bond theft had merely lifted a veil to reveal a deeper, more intricate—
"Poirot," Hastings whispered, leaning close. "You're not done with this, are you?" "That letter in Grayson's ledger, it's still nagging at you. And Madame de la Roche's debts, Langley's jumpiness, there's more to this, isn't there?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "You are becoming most perceptive, mon ami. The theft of the bonds. It was a crime of desperation, but it was not born in isolation. Someone provided Signor Rossi with the knowledge of Monsieur Grayson's bonds. The letter, the debts, the tensions, they point to a deeper motive, one that lies hidden in the shadows." Before Hastings could respond, a soft knock at the dining car door drew their attention. Monsieur Dubois, the steward, entered, his face pale but composed. "Monsieur Poirot, I have news. The conductor has telegraphed ahead to the next station. The authorities will take Signor Rossi and Mademoiselle Clara into custody upon arrival. But there is something else. One of the porters found this in the corridor, near Madame de la Roche's compartment." He held out a small object, a silver cigarette case, its surface engraved with an intricate monogram, C.L. Dubois hesitated, then added, "It was found just now, near the door to compartment 5. It belongs to Monsieur Langley, I believe." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he took the case, turning it over in his gloved hands. "Most interesting, Monsieur Dubois. And the corridor, was it empty when this was found?" "Yes, monsieur," Dubois replied. "The porter was making his rounds. No one was there." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the monogram. "Merci, Monsieur Dubois. Please ask Monsieur Langley to join us, and Madame de la Roche as well." As Dubois hurried away, Hastings frowned. "Langley's cigarette case? What does it mean, Poirot? He said he was in the dining car all evening." "Précisément," Poirot murmured. "And yet, this case, it finds itself in the corridor, near Madame de la Roche's compartment. A small detail, but the little grey cells, they take note." Moments later, Madame de la Roche— "Monsieur Langley, yet you claimed to be in the dining car from 6:30 until 8, with Madame de la Roche. How then does your cigarette case appear in the corridor at this hour?" Langley's flush deepened, his words stumbling. I must have misplaced it. Maybe when I went to freshen up before dinner. It's nothing, Poirot. Really, Madame de la Roche's fan snapped open, a nervous gesture. This is absurd, Monsieur Poirot. Charles is no thief. You've already caught your culprit, Signor Rossi. Why do you torment us?" Poirot's smile was polite but piercing. "Torment, madame? No. I seek only clarity. The theft of the bonds, it was orchestrated by Signor Rossi, but he did not act alone in knowledge. Someone knew of Monsieur Grayson's bonds, and that someone shared the information. Monsieur Langley, your cigarette case. It suggests you were in the corridor. Perhaps near Madame de la Roche's compartment, at a time you did not admit. Langley's hands shook, his voice rising. I told you I dropped it. I wasn't sneaking around, if that's what you're implying. Poirot turned to Madame de la Roche, his tone softening, but his eyes sharp. And you, Madame, your debts, they were more pressing than you admitted, were they not? A financial shortfall, a need for quick funds. Did you perhaps overhear Monsieur Grayson's plans in London and pass this knowledge to another? Madame de la Roche's fan froze, her face paling. You go too far, Monsieur Poirot. I have no connection to Signor Rossi. I barely know the man. Perhaps not directly, Poirot said, his voice low and deliberate. But information, it travels like a whisper, and whispers, they can reach desperate ears. Before Madame de la Roche could respond, Miss Vaughan, who had been listening silently from her table, spoke up, her voice cool and precise. Monsieur Poirot, you seem determined to uncover secrets where none exist. If Madame de la Roche or Monsieur Langley had a hand in this, where is your proof? Signor Rossi confessed, and the bonds are recovered. Poirot's gaze shifted to her, his expression unreadable. Proof, Mademoiselle.
Corridor earlier. I went to check on Madame de la Roche to see if she needed anything before dinner. That's all. Madame de la Roche's eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing her face. Charles, you said nothing of this. Why were you at my door? Langley's flush deepened, his words tumbling out. I was worried about you, that's all. Your debts. You told me they were pressing. I thought I could help. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his voice soft but incisive. Help, Monsieur Langley? Or perhaps you sought help from another, Signor Rossi, perhaps, who was desperate enough to act on your information. The dining car fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words settling over the passengers. Hastings leaned close, whispering, You think Langley tipped off Rossi? That's how he knew about the bonds. Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. The little grey cells, Hastings. They see the connections. Monsieur Langley, his loyalty to Madame de la Roche, it led him to share a secret. And that secret, it found its way to Signor Rossi's ears. The train rattled on, its rhythm a reminder of the journey's confines. The dining car, with its lingering shadows, held secrets yet to be fully unveiled. Poirot's trap had caught one thief, but the deeper motive, the whispered knowledge that set the crime in motion, was beginning to emerge, and Hastings knew the final truth was close at hand. The web unravels. The Orient Express hurtled through the night, its wheels a ceaseless cadence against the darkened European countryside. The dining car, with its polished mahogany and flickering chandeliers, had become a crucible where secrets were laid bare, each revelation peeling back another layer of deception. The passengers, their nerves frayed by Hercule Poirot's relentless pursuit of the truth, sat in a tense silence, their eyes darting between one another, as if searching for the next betrayal. Captain Hastings, seated beside his friend, felt a mounting anticipation. Sensing that Poirot was poised to tie together crime, it was not born in isolation. Someone provided the knowledge of the bonds, and that someone wove a web of deception that entangled us all. Now, we shall see the web unravel Mr. Theodore Grayson, his bonds secured, but his ledger still clutched tightly. Glared at Poirot. You've got your thief, Poirot. What more is there? Rossi's in custody, and my bonds are back. Let's be done with this. Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. Done, Monsieur Grayson? No. We are not done. The theft, it was the act, but the motive, it runs deeper. The crimson-sealed letter in your ledger, it holds a secret, does it not? A secret that connects to the knowledge of your bonds. Grayson's face reddened, his hand tightening around the ledger. I told you, that letter's personal. It's got nothing to do with Rossi or the theft. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. Everything, monsieur, is connected. The letter. It is from a woman, yes? A woman who knew of your plans, who perhaps shared that knowledge with another. Madame de la Roche, seated nearby, snapped her fan shut, her voice sharp. You accuse me, Monsieur Poirot? I have said I barely knew Monsieur Grayson. This is outrageous. Poirot turned to her, his tone calm but incisive. Not you, madame. Though your debts, they made you vulnerable. Your friendship with Monsieur Langley, it is more than it seems. Monsieur Langley, your cigarette case, found near Madame de la Roche's compartment. It suggests you were there, perhaps delivering a message, perhaps sharing a secret. Langley's flush deepened, his hands trembling as he rose. I've had enough of this, Poirot. I dropped the case. I told you. I was checking on Madame de la Roche, nothing more. I'm no informant. Poirot's eyes gleamed. No, Monsieur Langley, you are not the mastermind, but you are a link in the chain. Your loyalty to Madame de la Roche, it led you to act unwisely. You overheard Monsieur Grayson's plans, perhaps at the charity gala in London, where you and Madame de la Roche met him, and you shared the room. Careless, oui, but not criminal. Monsieur Langley, your indiscretion set the stage, but it was Signor Rossi who acted. And the letter, Monsieur Grayson, let us return to it. It is from Madame de la Roche, is it not? Grayson's jaw clenched, but he said nothing, his silence a confession. Madame de la Roche gasped, her voice rising. That is a lie! I wrote no such letter! Poirot's smile was serene but unyielding. No, madame, you did. A letter, perhaps written in haste, warning Monsieur Grayson of a danger, or perhaps offering a deal. The crimson seal, it matches the wax you use for your correspondence, found in your compartment when I asked Monsieur Dubois to check. The handwriting, it is yours, confirmed by a note you wrote to the steward earlier today. Madame de la Roche's face crumpled, her composure shattering. It was a warning. I heard rumors in London from my creditors that Grayson's bonds were a target. I wrote to him, anonymously, to warn him to be careful. I didn't know Rossi was involved. Grayson's eyes widened, his voice a growl. You knew someone was after my bonds and didn't tell me directly? Why the secrecy? Madame de la Roche's voice trembled. I was afraid. My debts, they tie me to dangerous people. I couldn't risk being seen as involved. Poirot nodded, his expression softening. Your fear, madame, it is understandable. But it led to silence, and silence enabled the crime. Monsieur Langley, your careless words reached Signor Rossi, who saw his chance. The web. It is now clear Hastings leaned close, whispering, so Langley's gossip started it all, and Madame de la Roche's letter was just a warning? But what about Miss Vaughan? She's been too quiet. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Mademoiselle Vaughan, she watches, she observes, but she is not part of this web. Her lipstick, it was a distraction, stolen by Rossi to mislead. Her silence, it is her nature, not her guilt. Miss Vaughan, hearing this, met Poirot's gaze. Human heart, Hastings, he said softly. It weaves webs of its own making. The little gray cells, they see through the strands, but the heart, It must learn its own lessons.
The Orient Express rattled on, its confines a microcosm of human folly and truth. The mystery of the bonds was solved, but the deeper motives, fear, loyalty, desperation, lingered, a reminder that even in resolution, some shadows remain. The Orient Express thundered through the pre-dawn hours, its wheels a steady pulse against the quiet of the European night. The dining car, with its polished wood and flickering chandeliers, seemed to exhale as the weight of the mystery lifted, leaving behind a fragile calm. The passengers, their secrets laid bare by Hercule Poirot's relentless logic, sat in a subdued hush, their faces reflecting a spectrum of emotions, relief, shame, and lingering unease. Captain Hastings, seated beside his friend, felt a bittersweet satisfaction, knowing that Poirot had not only solved the theft of the $1,000,000 bonds, but had also unraveled the deeper web of motives that connected the passengers in ways they had not anticipated. Poirot, his small frame immaculate as ever, leaned back in his chair, his green eyes contemplative. His notebook, now closed, rested in his pocket, a silent testament to the work of his little gray cells. The dining car was nearly empty now, with most passengers having retired to their compartments as the train neared its next station, where the authorities awaited Signor Rossi and Clara. Mr. Theodore Grayson remained, his bonds secured and his ledger open, the crimson-sealed letter tucked safely within. Madame de la Roche and Mr. Charles Langley had retreated, their whispered alliance strained by the revelations of Langley's indiscretion and Madame de la Roche's concealed warning. Miss Eleanor Vaughan sat alone, her book closed, her cool gaze fixed on the passing darkness outside. Mr. Ivan Volkov, ever solitary, had returned to his compartment, his dark coat a lingering shadow in Hastings's mind. Poirot sipped his crème de menthe, his expression serene.
La Roche's fear, not only of her debts, but of the consequences of her world. She knew Grayson's bonds were a target, yet she chose anonymity to protect herself. The human heart, it is complex, no? Before Hastings could reply, the dining car door opened, and Monsieur Dubois, the steward, entered, his face weary but resolute. "Monsieur Poirot, we are 1 hour from the station. The authorities have been informed, and they will board to take Signor Rossi and Mademoiselle Clara into custody. Is there anything else you require?" Poirot inclined his head. "Merci, Monsieur Dubois. Only one thing. Please ensure that Monsieur Grayson's bonds are handed directly to the authorities for safekeeping. And ask Mademoiselle Vaughan to join us for a moment." Dubois nodded and left, and Hastings raised an eyebrow. "Miss Vaughan? Why her, Poirot? You said she wasn't involved." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "She is not involved in the theft, Hastings, but she is a watcher, an observer. Her silence, it has been a constant in this drama, and I wish to understand it before we part." Moments later, Miss Vaughan entered, her gray dress as immaculate as ever, her expression cool but curious. "Monsieur Poirot, you sent for me?" "Oui, mademoiselle," Poirot said, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit. The case, it is closed, but I have observed you throughout this journey. Your detachment, your keen eyes, they tell me you see more than you say. Why?" Miss Vaughan's lips curved into a faint smile, the first Hastings had seen from her. "You are perceptive, Monsieur Poirot. I am a governess, but I am also a student of human nature. On this train, I saw tensions, secrets, and motives long before the theft was discovered. I chose to remain silent because my observations were not evidence, only impressions.
Poirot nodded, his expression approving. Impressions, mademoiselle. They are the shadows of truth. You saw the web of connections. Madame Delaroche's debts, Monsieur Langley's loyalty, Monsieur Grayson's secrecy. Yet you did not act.
Passenger's absence, a reminder of the journey's end. Hastings leaned close to Poirot, his voice low. You tied it all up, Poirot. But what about Langley and Madame Delaroche? Will they face consequences for their part? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Their consequences, Hastings. They are of the heart. Monsieur Langley's indiscretion. It will weigh on him. Madame Delaroche's silence. It will haunt her. The law. It will deal with Signor Rossi and Mademoiselle Clara. For the others, life itself is the judge. The train's whistle sounded, a mournful cry signaling the approach of the station. The dining car, with its lingering echoes of deception and revelation, seemed to settle into a final calm. Poirot rose, his movements precise, and adjusted his coat. Come, Hastings. The Orient Express. It carries us forward, but the mystery, it is behind us. Let us prepare for the next adventure. As they moved toward their compartment, the train slowed, its rhythm softening. The passengers, their secrets exposed, would soon scatter into the world beyond, carrying the lessons of the journey. Hastings glanced back at the dining car, its elegance now tinged with the memory of a crime solved. Poirot, ever the master of the human puzzle, walked ahead, his mind already turning to the next challenge. The Orient Express, a gilded cage of secrets, had yielded its truth to Hercule Poirot's little grey cells. And, as the train pulled into the station, the final reckoning was complete, leaving only the quiet satisfaction of justice served.